You're watching NFL Daily here on Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. Appreciate all of you for rocking with us. Let's get to the latest on the San Francisco 49ers, and the details were finally made official for center Alex Mack, who signed a contract with the 49ers. He is going to reunite with head coach Kyle Shanahan, who he was with in Cleveland and Atlanta. Mack's deal is officially 3 years, $14.85 million. Originally, it was expected that the 49ers contract with Mack was going to be a 1 year, $5.5 million deal, but it's actually $3 million for Alex Mack in San Francisco. Now, you might be saying, oh man, Alex Mack is 35 years old. I don't like this signing at all. It's actually not a bad deal because only 1 year of this contract with Alex Mack in San Francisco is guaranteed, and that number for this upcoming season is very low. He's going to make $1.4 million, which is totally reasonable for a player who has been one of the best centers in the game for a long, long time, and as I mentioned, has familiarity with Kyle Shanahan in his offense. What else did San Francisco do along the offensive line? One of the biggest blockbuster signings in free agency so far in 2021. They signed Trent Williams to a record-breaking 6-year, $138+ million contract. The deal includes $55 million guaranteed. Both of those figures, the most ever money paid to a left tackle in the history of the NFL. Now, Alex Mack is 35. Trent Williams is 33. Don't panic, because this contract and the specifics of it, it's actually broken into two separate contracts, 3 years apiece. So if Trent Williams ages poorly, if he gets injured, if he somehow goes downhill fast, the 49ers are going to be able to get out of that contract without being hit with a bad financial burden. When you look at the 49ers offensive line depth chart, I think this unit is set heading into this upcoming season. Trent Williams at left tackle, really like Laken Tomlinson at left guard. Alex Mack slides in at center. I still think they need to address that position in the later rounds of the NFL draft. Mike McGlinchey is at right tackle. He's a potential trade candidate. And Colton Mikovits, he's going to be in a competition for that right guard spot. That's why we don't have a backup listed there, because we're not really sure who's going to play right guard, but we've seen in team building aspects before that you can pick up a right guard or a left guard on the open market for a cheap price. So you look at the 49ers offensive line depth chart there, I think they're stacked, and I think that's a great front for Jimmy Garoppolo if they move forward with him as the quarterback of this football team. Grade the 49ers offensive line unit for me. I'm going to go B+, but I want you to hop in the comment section and grade it for me. We're going to go back to school here. Give it an A, B, C, D, or F. Let's move on to the 49ers secondary, another area of need for this team. They brought back another familiar face, Jason Verett. He signed a 1-year contract worth $5.5 million. This is a prove-it deal for a guy who in the previous years has been off injured, but last year he did play 13 games, and he was one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Injuries, no doubt a concern for Jason Verett. From 2016 to 2019, he did only play in 4 games, but when he's upright, when he's healthy, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and last year he was elite. He only gave up 1 touchdown in pass coverage in 2020. You look at the numbers, continued 60 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 7 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. This is a traditional coverage corner who, if he is on the field and healthy, he can lock down the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver. And to get him at $5.5 million for the player that he can be with the pedigree that he has, this is a good deal for San Francisco. It's also a nice contract and a good situation at cornerback for San Francisco because they brought back another player who they are very familiar with, and that's Emmanuel Mosely. Emmanuel Mosely, this is a pretty cool story. Since 2018, 90 tackles, 17 pass breakups, and as a secondary guy, that's pretty solid. And hey, he got a nice payday after being an undrafted free agent. So you're talking about a high-character player who loves the game of football, and Kyle Shanahan really likes those players. He signed a 2-year deal worth up to $10 million. So over the past few years, he's been able to prove himself, and John Lynch said, Emmanuel Mosely, we're very impressed by you. We're going to pay you and reward you for what you've done for our football team, and he's been a big playmaker for this team in years past. So The 49ers secondary, are you happy with it? Are you happy with them bringing back Jason Verett and Emmanuel Mosely? Hop into the comment section. This is an interactive YouTube channel. That's what we do here at Chat Sports. This is your opportunity to hop on board and join the show. Type 1 for yes and type 2 for no. Now, I still think that the 49ers need some help at the back end of this defense because, one, you're losing a lot of players. When this team entered free agency, 9 members of the secondary were due to be free agents, and DeMeco Ryans is a first-year defensive coordinator. He has his work cut out for him because Robert Saleh was one of the best defensive coordinators in the entire league. He's obviously, of course, the head coach of the New York Jets. So I still think the 49ers need back-end help. Why? Because Jaquiski Tartt, he is a free agent. He made $6.5 million last year. And financially, the 49ers are in a pretty solid spot if they do want to add a safety to kind of bulk up this secondary. They currently have $10.6 million in cap space, and I think they need to bring in a safety because they have no experienced safety options on the roster outside of Jimmy Ward. We take a peek at the 49ers secondary depth chart. Other than the strong safety position, I like what DeMeco Ryans has at his disposal. Emmanuel Mosely, Jason Verett, Jimmy Ward. That strong safety spot is something we're going to focus on as we continue on here on the 49ers Report on NFL Daily here on Chat Sports, because that is a position that they could fill still with that $10.5 million in cap space. Let's look at some of the players who are still on the board. We start off with Anthony Harris. Played on the franchise tag last year, so he made a lot of money with the Minnesota Vikings. He was certainly much better in 2019. Was that because he was trying to prove himself and get a long-term contract? Possibly. He had 6 interceptions 2 years ago. A little bit of a step back last year, but that entire Vikings defense took a step back as a whole, and Anthony Harris was part of that regression. But Anthony Harris could possibly come on the cheap. He's only 29 years old. Last year in 2020, he didn't have any interceptions, but he still did have 104 tackles. So this can be a guy who you can kind of line up all across the secondary. He can drop back in coverage. He can play in the box. He's a little bit physical as well. So Anthony Harris, a potential option for the 49ers in free agency if they decide to fill that hole. Another guy, well, this is a familiar name for 49ers fans, and it's a player who's been often injured, Jaquiski Tartt. So Jaquiski Tartt, he's 29 years old. The problem with him is that he's been injured over the last couple of years, up and down. When he's been able to stay on the field, he's been a productive player, especially at times last year. Because of the injury issues, Jaquiski Tartt could also be an affordable option for San Francisco at the safety spot. Let's move on now to Xavier Woods, another good player. Last year in 2020, 72 tackles, only 1 pass breakup. Again, you'd be betting on him to possibly rebound, but Xavier Woods, with the 49ers having about $10.5 million in cap space, that is also an experienced player that they would be able to bring in, and they'd be able to play him, and you wouldn't really have any drop-off in regards to having an experienced player back there. Other names that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, Keanu Neal. He has also been injured a lot, and the consistent theme with some of these free agents, guys who are injured a lot, but Keanu Neal also a really good player. And then how about Kareem Jackson of the Denver Broncos? The problem that the 49ers run into there, he might be pretty expensive. They might not be able to afford him. So which safety should the 49ers sign? Put a name into the comments. Let me know. I'm going to go back once I'm done this segment and check them out. List a safety that the 49ers should sign. I'm interested to see what you guys come up with. Now, cornerback is a position that I think the 49ers should target in the NFL draft. And luckily for San Francisco, some studs coming out in the 2021 class. I'm looking at guys like Patrick Surtain. If the 49ers want to pick up a cornerback in the first round of the NFL draft, man, he was so good at the University of Alabama. And I love players who played in big games and who were part of just monster pressure-packed environments. That's Patrick Surtain right there. Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. He opted out in 2020, so a lot of people aren't as familiar with him, but I will tell you this, he's one of the best cornerbacks rather, in the upcoming class. What he would give a defense that drafts him, he's got track down speed, which is really valuable at that position. And a couple more guys I want to get through. Jaycee Horn out of South Carolina. Fun fact here, he is the son of Joe Horn, so he's got that NFL pedigree. He is also really good. He could be a latter first-round pick, possibly a guy who's picked up in the second round, and then some potential day 2 names who I want you all to do some research on, check out their highlights and monitor: Greg Newsome II out of Northwestern and Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State. One of my favorite second, third round guys who could be on the draft board for the 49ers. You think about his father, Asante Samuel. He was no doubt a risk taker at the cornerback position in his prime with the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles, but he really did a great job of reading the eyes of quarterbacks and intercepting passes, especially in big spots. So this is what Asante Samuel had to say, and this is kind of why I like him, because he's a confident dude. He was asked in the pre-draft process yesterday about having to play man coverage, and this is what Asante Samuel Jr. had to say. Man coverage is a dog mentality. It's you versus me. I'm a dog. You're not going to win your rep versus me. You're not going to outwork me throughout the week. And Florida State really brought out the man coverage ability for me. That's what Asante Samuel had to say. And the confidence, you need confidence outside at the cornerback position when you're in isolation against some of the top wide receivers in the NFL, because you're going to get burned. That's the reality of football now. If you're a cornerback, you're going to get burned for a touchdown. But can you bounce back? Can you have the mental fortitude to maintain confidence? That quote right there tells me Asante Samuel Jr. certainly has confidence at the cornerback position. And if the 49ers go after him in the second or third round, I still think, even though that he's a rookie, he'd be inexperienced, no doubt. You could start him day 1 from the slot, and then as he grooms, as he develops, as he mentioned, he can play man coverage outside one-on-one as an outside corner. So 49ers still need back-end help. To summarize all of this up: Jaquiski Tartt, he's a free agent, and the 49ers do have $10.6 million in cap space. So they're going to probably target a safety potentially in free agency to try to bring in an affordable option. And it's my hope that the 49ers go after a cornerback in either the first round or the second round. We talked about that quote from Asante Samuel Jr. He said, "I'm a dog, man. What's good?" Is Asante Samuel Jr. a dog? Don't take it quite literally, okay? Is he a dog as a football player? Hop into the comment section, type Y for yes, and type N for no.